Hola class, how we doing? We having any fun yet today? Well, maybe I can answer some chapter 11 questions and see if that's fun. I don't know. Here we go. How do we ensure the fairness between different teams when implementing a compensation plan? Well, if I were to read into this question and say, the teams may be different, but is it the same product line? Is it just different geographies? If it's the same team, then it should be the same plan. And we're going to see this in a number of the questions when I was reading through. The important thing for compensation systems is that they are well defined, and there is not a strategic reason, but there's a rationale, a logic behind why sales manager / HR is using this particular compensation plan. And this particular compensation plan remains consistent. Now, I'm going to hold off on this until we get further down, but I have more on this theme. How do you identify the available compensation methods in firms? Well, I believe this question is nothing more than what's on page 365 in Exhibit 11.2. And really, we talk about straight salary, straight commission, and combination. And it's the firm has to decide which one of these they're going to use. Does it make sense for a company to have different compensation strategies individualized to the salesperson's strengths, or is it more cost effective to have one system in place for the entire sales force? Okay. It is not only more cost effective, it is more consistent from the sales manager perspective to have the same plan across various salespeople. I think having different individualized plans for each individualized salesperson is opening up a can of worms that so-and-so is getting this, but how is so-and-so getting this, and how is so-and-so getting this, and then people value things differently. Being consistent, having a logical rationale is significantly better. Now, I still believe there could be diversity across compensation systems, particularly when it goes across geographies or across product lines or across customer sets. But it's to the advantage of the firm, or I really think they have to do it. The more they can stay consistent with a sizable number of people doing the exact same thing, the better. It's easier to manage. What is the best way to incentivize older salespeople who have or want to plateau until their careers, until retirement? Well, there could be a culture within the firm that plateauing is not acceptable. And those that do try to go easy street and plateau know that consequences are coming. But usually what's the case here is that the older salesperson is really just looking for some attention. They feel a little entitled. They feel like they've earned it, and they can coast a little. But usually, if you give these individuals more attention, they won't coast. And more importantly, usually when you give these people, if you have, instead of saying older, I'll say experienced. If you have an experienced salesperson and he or she was very strong, one good way to prevent them from plateauing is making them a mentor of a junior salesperson that has the energy, that has the drive that this salesperson may have had at the same level. And and that might be enough to energize this more experienced salesperson. How is the perception of compensation fairness ensured in a large organization with multiple compensation structures? Well, this is the same thing that I said up here and up here. It's consistency. And not only is it consistency, but there needs to be a logical rationale. Remember when we had case 1 where there didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason why each division had a different compensation plan. It seemed pretty random, and there was no clear rationale to why management and HR were doing what they were doing. Well, if there's a clear rationale, then everybody's on the same page and we're good. How do you define what types of sales can be rewarded? Well, I want to broaden this question and say, look, we're talking about compensation systems, but compensation systems don't have to be just on metrics related to revenue/sales. There could be other metrics that are more important. There could be metrics such as percentage of customers that stay with you as opposed to leave. You know, your leaky bucket scenario. A customer retention number. You know, this metric might be really valuable with regard to firms that value that CRM philosophy. And that might be the differentiating factor between a small bonus and a big bonus. Another differentiating factor could be something along the lines of percentage of sales, mentoring, training kind of deal. It could be, you could be rewarded on how long a customer stays. You know, if you have customers that have been with the company for 15 years, you know, there could be some kind of metric along there. So you have to be careful. It's not just what kind of sales are rewarded. I mean, there are some firms that do reward more for first-time customers versus existing customers. I don't know what kind of message that sends. There are firms that incentivize or provide kickers, so to speak, either extra bonuses, extra compensation, some kind of, for a product that's laying around that's, you know, going to go old or stale, or stuff that gets moved. You know. What prerequisites or perks, including higher compensation, a better automobile, and better office facilities, belong to non-financial reward? If they are, can you explain it? Okay, hold that thought. Okay, I wanted to double check something, and when I read the question, I had to go back and check. I want you to think about this. The book talks about it in terms of financial rewards and non-financial rewards. So I want you to think as pure non-financial reward, and then this middle category, which is less salary type reward, but still financial. Some of these are considered non-financial, and then pure financial. So let's talk about these. A pure financial reward is exactly what it sounds like. Bonus, you know, super commissions, some kind of extraordinary paycheck. These are direct compensation, all right? A pure non-financial reward would be recognition, you know, salesperson of the month, you know, being the head of the mentorship program. These are non-financial rewards. You know, maybe if you have some of these non-financial rewards, you have less pressure to go out and sell, because if 40% of your job is running the mentorship program or the sales training program, well, then there's less pressure for you to have to always make quota, and you might have a different quota kind of thing. Now, some of the other things that the chapter is talking about a non-financial reward. Now, expense accounts. Now, an expense account is considered non-financial because it doesn't show up in your salary. However, there is a monetary component to it. You know, you do get to do fun things like dinners and golfs and events and trips, and although that's not direct compensation, that's a wonderful perk. You know, if non-financial reward, I mean, they're sending you all over the country to go travel to visit clients, but you get to keep your reward miles. and maybe you can send your family on a vacation with nothing but miles. That's a big deal. There is a financial component to it, but it's not directly related to salary. Having a car, for instance, the car is not part of your salary, but it's a perk, and because you don't have to take some of your salary to go out and pay insurance some pay insurance, some don't. You don't have to pay out of your salary for an automobile or gas or maintenance. For some people, that's a $15,000 swing in the right direction per year. That's $15,000 that would normally be coming out of your salary that you're using to pay for an automobile, for gas, and now the company's paying for that. So your salary may be $55,000, but because they're giving you a car, my brother-in-law, for instance, he is a farmer rep, and he's got a pretty solid salary, and they give him $1,500 a month car allowance, whatever he needs to do. So he could get a car that's, I don't know, unbelievable Mercedes that's a $1,200 a month lease, and then have $300 left over for all of his various other expenses related to the car. He could get, I don't know, a Buick for $500 a month and have $1,000 left over to do whatever he needs to do, gas, and if there's anything left over from that, it's just extra cash. That's a nice perk. He went with a BMW, by the way, in case you were wondering. If a company can be somehow assured of maximum effort of productivity from its sales force, would it tend to prefer salary commission plans? Well, yes, because salary commission plans, exactly how much money you need to expend. And this is related to some of these other questions. I have a very good friend. She's in pharma sales. It's a very boutique firm, but she's their head salesperson. Okay? Her commissions are so high that they actually sometimes don't have enough cash during the month free over and above all their other expenses for the company to pay her commissions. So she has commissions deferred because they just owe her money and they can't give it to her all at once because there's just not enough cash on the balance sheet to do so. Now, if you want to ask me privately, I won't do it on a recording. I'll tell you what some of those numbers are. But let's just pretend that they're really high. Okay? So this firm has a hard time gauging. For instance, it's a small firm. There's 33, 35 employees of this firm. There's 3 salespeople. Really, 1 main salespeople and 2 inside sales, assistant, kind of people. She does all the selling, basically. So, depending on how much she sells is how much commissions they have to budget for, but they don't know. They forecast, but if you just have salary, then there's less forecasting. There's less variability. But the big downside, as it says in the book, that you might get an awful lot of coasting. How do you assure maximum effort of productivity? You can't. On page 366, the segment regarding salaries, they also give management more flexibility as it's easy to reassign salespeople. Please clarify this statement. Is it saying that since a salesperson's compensation remains unchanged with the reassignment, management can expect his or her level of sales effort not to be affected? Well, I don't think you can expect the sales effort to not be affected. I agree with this part. Is it saying that a salesperson who is primarily compensated by commission and bonuses will likely see a much more dramatic change in their sales volume performance if they're relocated to a new territory compared to a salesperson who's primarily salaried? Well, first of all, when we're talking about this particular question, we are talking about straight salary scenarios. And it is easier sometimes to move someone straight salary because let's say individual A is in territory A and she's rocking in territory A and doing really well. But she's doing well enough that they want to promote her, salesperson A, to territory B. Well, you could expect some change in performance because it's a new territory. Hopefully it's the same product line. It's a whole new client list. So there's going to be some impact on performance until she gets a chance to ramp up the speed. It's just natural salesperson behavior. I don't know whether they're salaried or not salaried is going to impact that much. It is easier when, she's doing really well. Maybe she can feel better if she's doing well in A, knowing that she's going to go to B, and her salary is going to stay the same, even though there's going to be a steep learning curve. Maybe that's kind of what the book's getting at here. Regarding on page 370, I'm flipping. All right. Some desired effects of ceilings can be accomplished with arbitrary da-da-da-da-da. Sales managers can do this by doing historical records. All right. This is kind of going back to the scenario I was talking back with Tammy. I just said a name. I shouldn't have said that. But a friend of mine. Think about also, I was preparing the case this morning. It is possible by looking at historical records that you could see how historically the new compensation would have shaken out given how people performed in the past. Some firms have a hard time meeting their commissions. Some firms, get greedy and the sales managers think we're paying too much in commissions. So how much money can we save if we change the commission structure and do this? How much if we change and get rid of all bonuses and just make the commission kickers there? You can do this if-then kind of planning based on historical data. And those sets of new numbers going forward can help the management team plan. I think this question, if you just go back and look at our case 2 and look at some of the figures on page, look, it's right here. Let me figure it. Look at Exhibit 1 and look at Exhibit 2. Particularly Exhibit 1, and you can see... No, that's really Exhibit 1. You can see, well, what if I modify this and what would happen? I mean, we could do it in Excel and... Does the salesperson's knowledge of the exact compensation terms that they work under at the same time affect their sales effort? It has some, yeah. How can it not? If so, are the historical records of limited use for predicting future performance? No, they're not of limited use because I know past behavior isn't an exact forecast for future behavior. But past behavior is more within the norms than any other future forecast. I mean, we are trying to predict the future. Predicting the future is not humanly possible. We are not omniscient. But at least we can have a feel for what it's going to cost us if we make a change given past performance. And then you always do like worst case, best case scenarios and you put some boundaries around it. Banks call them stress tests. Well, there's nothing wrong with a sales management team having a stress test saying, what if our salespeople outperform and they break the record in the history of the company? What's that going to look like and how much are we going to owe? And are we going to be able to do that? Well, you could game plan for that. It doesn't hurt. I don't see why there would be a problem for the sales manager to game plan. I think it would be a problem for the sales manager to keep making changes as we saw in case number 1. But as long as the sales managers are consistent and he or she has a logical rationale to why they're doing so, they explain fully, they make sure that everyone's on the same page, I don't think there's going to be a problem. I thank you for your time. I look forward to reading your cases in the very near future. Thanks.